Hi, fourth grade friends. In today's reading lesson, we are going to review how to use our making an inference superpower. Okay, now, why do we call it a superpower? Do you remember? I'm going to give you a minute to think about it. Yes, you're right. Making an inference is an ability to see something that's not really there in the text. Okay, we have to guess. We have to make a reasonable guess, okay, about something that is not stated in the text. All right, now the only way to do that, the only way to use that superpower is by combining two forces. All right, the first force is what the text says. Typically, we call that text evidence. All right, we usually underline it, or oftentimes we even use a highlighter. Okay, it's exactly right from the text. All right, the other force is what you already know about the topic. That's your background knowledge. That's experiences you've had, knowledge that you have up here in your brains about certain things. Our text today is about an animal, so I want you to start thinking about what you already know about animals, and specifically birds, okay? But I want you to start thinking of that background knowledge that you already have about animals. And then when I read to you today, we're going to be listening carefully for that text evidence that we need. So that way we can use our superpower called making an inference, okay? Seeing something that is not stated in the text. Making a reasonable guess. All right, so I've got my superhero cape on. I am ready to do this with you guys today. All right, I hope you are too. Today's text is called The Penny Thief, and it is written by Charlotte Fairchild. Before I read, I'm noticing the word thief in the title, and in case you weren't sure what that means, that's just another word for somebody who steals things, okay? And I also know that this is about animals because I can see a picture of an animal on this text too, okay? If you print out any of the resources that I email to you and your family, you can have this text right out in front of you with me so that you can see this too, okay? Now, if you do have them out in front of you, you can go ahead and follow along with me as I'm reading, okay? And if you want a pencil too to underline any of that text evidence, excellent. If you don't have it out in front of you, that's okay. I just want you to be listening very carefully for things as far as what is happening to the pennies, okay? I want you to be good listeners, and I want you to listen for some text evidence. That might be something we're going to need here in a little bit, okay? Some text evidence about the pennies, okay? All right, here we go. The Penny Thief by Charlotte Fairchild. My family got a parakeet on the very day that we moved into our new apartment. On our first night in the new place, we tried to name our new pet. I wanted to call it Tweety, but no one else liked that name. We couldn't find a name that everyone agreed on, so we agreed to think about it for a while. My father always emptied his pocket change into a large glass bowl in the hallway. When we wanted money for this or that, he would count it out for us from the bowl. The very next night, as he tossed his change into the bowl, he mumbled, "Funny. I'm not sure there were mostly pennies on top." None of us knew where the pennies had gone. Every day that week, my father complained that someone was taking pennies from his bowl. We all pleaded ignorance, which means they just really didn't know. And every day that week, we discussed a new name for our pet. At the end of the week, we took everything out of the bird cage to clean it. In every corner of the cage was a pile of pennies. That's when we learned that my mother had let the bird out to fly around every morning. "Penny thief," my father cried, and our pet was named on the spot. Now, if you remember, I had asked you to think about those details that refer to what is happening to the pennies. Now, first of all, I know that father is always emptying his pocket change that he has in his pocket into this large glass bowl that they have in their home, in the hallway. So I think that's something that's important to remember. And then I also remember reading that as Dad was sitting there one night, he realized that, I'm sure there were mostly pennies on top. None of us knew where the pennies had gone, so they're missing. The pennies have gone missing. And nobody really knew what they were until at the end of the story, it says in every corner of the cage was a pile of pennies. Okay, so we know that dad is putting them in a bowl. Then all of a sudden they're missing, and then they're reappearing in the parakeet's cage. Okay, so let's see if we can use our inferencing superpower to make a guess, make that reasonable guess about who we think the penny thief is. Because if you were listening very carefully, the text does not directly tell us. That's where we're going to have to use our superpower. We're going to have to see something that's not really stated. So let's think about this chart that you see up here. What does the text say specifically about the pennies? Okay, well, I know they were missing, or they were first put into the bowl, then they went missing, but the detail that I'm really thinking is going to help me out the most is the one that states that in every corner of the cage was a pile of pennies. I'm going to shorten this just a little bit, okay? Corner of cage, pennies. Okay. Now, if you're doing this at home with me, you could copy this directly, word for word from the text, as long as you put those quotation marks around it. If you remember, quotation marks look like this. That just shows that we're borrowing somebody else's words, okay? But I'm just going to shorten it for us, okay? So I know that the text told me that in every corner of the cage was a pile of pennies. I think there's also something else that I'm thinking about. What did we find out about what Mother does with the bird? I think I remember reading that Mom lets the bird fly around the house in the morning. I'm really thinking that that's going to be really, really important so that I can make my inference, use my superpower. So I'm going to also add that Mom lets the bird out. And I'm also going to add that she lets that bird out every morning. Now remember, that's exactly what the text is saying. If you copied it word for word from the text, just remember to put those quotation marks around it. I'm just shortening it for sake of time, okay? So the text evidence that I have, or what the text says is, I have that in the corner of the cage, they found a pile of pennies. And I'm also finding out that Mom has let the bird out every morning, lets the bird out of its cage. Now I have to think, what do I already know about this topic? Well, I'm going to let you in on something. I am actually kind of terrified of birds. One hit me once and landed right here on my chest, and it was fluttering around and it scared me. And ever since then, they kind of creep me out a little bit. However, I actually really enjoy having bird houses and bird feeders in my yard. It's kind of weird. I really am afraid of them, but I also really like watching them. I've got cardinals, and I actually had a goldfinch the other day out in my yard. But with all that being said, I don't know a ton about birds, but I read a book called Hippos Can't Swim recently, and there was something in that book that I actually thought of as I was reading. If I think about a penny is kind of a shiny object, especially if they're brand new pennies. If you've ever seen one, they're super clean and super shiny. But I know based on that book that I read that some animals are actually attracted to shiny objects. So that's a little bit of background knowledge that I have, or what I already know about the topic, is that some animals are actually attracted to shiny objects. Are attracted to shiny objects. Now, you might have some other background knowledge, and unfortunately, I just can't hear it, but you can go ahead and add that to your chart if you want. If you're working through this with me, go ahead. What other background knowledge do you have about birds or animals in general? The background knowledge that I have, based on that book, Hippos Can't Swim, is that some animals are actually attracted to shiny things. Now, here's the fun part. Here's where we get to combine the two forces, okay? What the text says and what I already know about the topic, so that I can reignite my superpower of being able to make an inference or a reasonable guess about something that's not stated in the text. And we're making an inference about who we think the penny thief is. based on the fact that they found those shiny pennies in the corner of the bird's cage, and the fact that mom lets that bird fly around their house every morning, and what I already know that some animals and maybe even birds are attracted to shiny objects, my inference, my guess is that the bird saw those pennies, picked them up, and took them back to its cage. My inference is that the bird was the penny thief. Okay? The bird saw those shiny pennies, picked them up, and brought them back to the cage. Okay, the bird was the penny thief. Alrighty, friends, I hope you were able to read alongside with me today. If you didn't have the text in front of you, that is okay. You did not necessarily need it. Okay, now I'm going to give you a little bit of a challenge. Okay, I'm going to give you a challenge for the end of today's lesson. And I'm going to give you some clues. And I want you to be thinking about what you already know about what I'm going to read to you. And I want you to make an inference. Okay, now here it comes. And you can email me your response if you would like to, or post it on our Flipgrid in addition to the other activity that I have for you on there. Okay, so here it is. In my backpack, I have a library card, a rain jacket, and a soccer ball. What inferences can you make about how I am going to spend my day based on what's in my backpack? I want you to make an inference. How am I going to spend my day based on the fact that I have a library card, a soccer ball, and a rain jacket in my bag? Alrighty, friends. See you later.